Hey, thrivers. Have you noticed this about narcissists? That they're always the hero or the victim, but never ever anything in between. That's exactly what I'm going to break down today and make it really crystal clear for you. And you go, oh my God, that's actually what's going on. Because for the narcissist, you may not have realized that they're wanting to position themselves as the savior of the story, the one that rescued everybody, the one that built everything, the one that deserves the endless praise, the one that nothing would happen if it wasn't for them. Or they're the one who's been wronged beyond measure. They're the one that feels misunderstood and betrayed and abused, and they're really hard done by. It's all about them being the victim. But here's the truth, none of these roles are actually real. But what happens is you get caught up in them, and we're going to break that down today, how you get caught up in them, how they're playing those rules, and how you get caught up in the spell and lose yourself. So before we do, I just want to say welcome, beautiful thrivers, and I so appreciate you tuning into my lives and this work and being a part of the Thriver mission, which is about not just trying to survive narcissistic abuse, but to thrive after it. And I'm really grateful for you being here for this important conversation that I really trust is going to enlighten you. And if you're new here, welcome to our amazing community of people recovering from narcissistic abuse, reclaiming their power and creating the life they were born to live, not despite what happened to them, but actually as a result of what happened to them. And here's the difference. I'm not here to just give you understandings about narcissists that are going to keep you stuck in the cycle and endlessly researching and putting your focus on them. I'm here to give you true healing solutions, ones that clear the trauma from your body, dissolving the hooks, freeing you to a higher, better reality that you've ever lived even before this happened to you. If that's you, if you're on the journey with me, and if that's what you want, write thrive on in the comments and put an exclamation mark with it so we give it some power, because you deserve that. You deserve to thrive. Okay, let's start off with looking at why narcissists are only the hero or the victim. And I mean that, only. And this is what you will never see happen with a narcissist, the gray area where they're one or the other. And what does that look like? It looks like a balanced, accountable position in a story. It means, well, I'm a good person, but sometimes I mess up, and sometimes I'm not the hero, and sometimes I need to look at myself, self-reflect, or be accountable. Narcissism is a false self-construct. It's so black and white. And it's an identity from the false self that the narcissist has to defend at all costs. It's a shame-based disorder. That's what narcissism is. And what that means is that the true inner self, the inner child, the inner being feels so defective and broken that at some point the narcissist created a false narrative, a construct of a self, which is the ego that the narcissist would like to be. And it's their buffer against feeling the destroyed, dysfunctioning inner being. So the false self cannot sit in that messy middle ground of I'm neither good or victimized. I'm neither a hero. I'm neither a victim. I'm in the real complexities of life in gray area, in middle ground, which means, okay, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. And it can even mean, well, yes, I messed up. Here's where I need to grow. Here's where I need to self-reflect and have a good look at myself. Because to a fragile ego of a narcissist, that is literal emotional annihilation. So instead, what the narcissist does is split into that black and white thinking. And first of all, they apply it to themselves. So this is the hero. So the hero is, look at what I do. look at everything I've done, look at what I've achieved. And it's actually faux superiority. It's feeding the false self to say, I'm one up, I'm better than you, I'm better than everybody else, I'm omnipotent. That's what the ego would love to hang on to. Or in ego injury, in a narcissistic injury, the narcissist becomes the victim, which is when things go wrong, when that mirage cannot hold and something challenges it. So then what happens as the victim, the narcissist will say, look at how I'm wronged. That shouldn't have happened to me. Those people, that situation were perpetrators. They messed up my false self. How dare you bring something to the table that is threatening the constructed illusion / delusion of my false self. You're challenging that, and now I've been wronged. So that's what happens. And it's poor me. I'm the victim. It doesn't matter what I did. It's the reaction to what I did which is causing me to be victimized. Now, I'm sure that you've experienced this. Just say yes in the chat if you have experienced this with somebody in your life that you suspect is a narcissist, or you know that they were narcissistic, and it just meant that there was this tripwire on any perceived criticism that was going on in your life. So this is why narcissists are fair weather people. It's all about conditional love. It's all got conditions around it. They're conditional spouses, partners, friends, and work colleagues, because they can't take responsibility and they can't get in grey area. The fragile false self that they live from has got to be seen as perfect, good, decent, wholesome. And that's why also too, a lot of narcissists, apart from within the home and the four walls, they're people pleasers. They don't lay boundaries, they don't rock the boat, they don't speak up, because they never want to have that false self triggered into feeling anything less than the mirage of perfect, good, decent, wholesome, helpful. So their internal narrative about themselves on one side, which we're looking at now, is the superiority. I'm the one that's significant, I'm irreplaceable, I'm omnipotent in this situation, I'm one up. Now, the precarious other flip side is one of extreme self-deprecation and self-contempt. So that's their inner shame. And the narcissist feels and tries to buffer against that, but you will see that come out when the narcissist is being the victim. If anything pierces the superiority mask of the false self and triggers the shame, which is always bubbling under the surface because it's never being dealt with, it's been disowned, it's been separated from, and the narcissist tries to cover it over with the false self and never wants to go there and doesn't want to look at it, which is why they don't self-reflect, which is why they don't do the inner work, and which is why they don't heal. So to have that come up for the narcissist feels like complete emotional annihilation of the false self, which is the only lens that they're trying to live through. So they're going to defend that at any and all costs. So the fragile false self of the narcissist has got to be seen beyond reproach. If they're perceived as perfect, good, decent, wholesome, or helpful, then they can keep the deep shame wound buried. But of course, this isn't possible. This isn't real life. And real life and soul evolution is about making mistakes. It's about being a better person. It's about self-reflecting. It's about leaning into the parts of ourselves that aren't working holistically with others or situations or our careers or whatever it is, so that we can grow, so we can evolve. Narcissists are terrified of growth and evolution because it would mean that they actually have to look at their shame wounds, which they're not going to do. So a narcissist is living in the terror of being triggered. And that's why when things in their life don't go well, the narcissist is not in a good place. So when something pierces that illusion, and maybe you've pointed out a mistake, something like you haven't washed the dish properly. Like it could be that simple. Or maybe you express a need that I actually need you to listen and validate me when I'm coming forth with something about our relationship instead of gaslighting and shutting down. Or will you set a healthy boundary where you say, I'm not going to accept that behavior? The shame wound can erupt. And to them, it's not just about embarrassment if I messed up. It's more than that. You know, you can have people that don't like stuff being pointed out, a mistake or a flaw. And it's like, oh, I really don't like that. But I can accept that. I can work with that. Okay, I don't like it. But yeah, it's tough, but I'm going to look at that. I'm going to have some self-realization here. It's more than that to a narcissist. So you know some people who are struggling with their growth, but they may not have narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is much worse. It's literally feels to them like a complete annihilation of the false self structure that they've created as the buffer against how they really feel about themselves. So when that gets triggered in their mind, black and white, think black and white, in their mind, if they don't feel that they're perfect and the world sees them as perfect, then they're nothing. So it goes from superiority to massive inferiority, and that is intolerable. So rather than work consciously with their environment, offering what's actually needed for relationship and growth and evolution, which is honesty, humility, accountability, course correction, curiosity, wanting to see the other side of things, having a look at the whole picture instead of the ego defenses, and wanting to work with others in cooperation, which of course builds trust and connection and healthy relationship, the switch gets flipped from the false self mirage to the deep trigger of inferiority, and the defense mechanisms come flying up. So what's always going to happen is you're going to be blamed for bringing it up, whatever it was, even the dish, you didn't wash the dish properly, right? There's going to be a snide comment, there's going to be sarcasm, there's going to be a rebuttal, there's going to be bringing up something that you do, or an attack on your character even. That's what happens. So what has happened with that flip of the switch, the hero, which is their image of themselves, the hero vanishes and they become the victim. Okay. And the role reversal is all about projecting their own shame, disowned shame, outwards to protect the false self. Now, what is so interesting about shame and projection is shame becomes contempt. So the contempt for themselves that they're never healing becomes the projection of the contempt for you for bringing up the trigger of the self-contempt that they're never healing. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat. Write down facts or sense if you're picking up what I'm putting down, because I really hope that this can help you understand why you're not getting anywhere, why you're not getting any conflict resolution. Let me know in the chat if this resonates with you. So, which brings us to why healthy conflict resolution is impossible with a narcissist, because they're splitting. They're splitting. This is a primitive defense mechanism where people see, first of all, themselves in absolutes. I'm either all good or I'm all bad. But what they're actually doing is putting you in the same category. And you need to understand that. So underneath all of that shame, intolerance, There's an inability to hold or process any suggestion that they could be wrong without it collapsing the fragile false self construct. We understand that now. They cannot process any hint of collapsing the false self construct. That's a narcissistic injury, which is an intense emotional wound, not threatening the grandiose false self construct. You're good. If you do, you're all bad. So that's why the contempt is so ferocious. That's why they look at you like they hate you. That's why they start talking about not wanting the relationship, how bad you are, and the personal attacks on your character. Because to them, you are actually now the enemy because you've threatened the false self. So it's impossible for a narcissistic personality to maintain a stable, affectionate connection with you when there's a disagreement. And there is relational chaos instead. So it's not like they cannot assimilate. You're a good person, we love each other, and now we're just having a conversation about something, or you've brought up a complaint or a need or a want or a boundary, and I cannot hold relational in a relational container that you're a good person and we love each other. It's impossible. You are now the enemy because you have threatened the false self, fragile, paper-thin construct. Does that make sense? Let me know. Just say yes in the chat if this makes sense. Because what I really hope this is going to do, you're going to stop blaming yourself. You're going to think, if I just said it differently or explained it differently, or if I was calmer, or if I was able to, understand their perspective more, or I was able to do more healings on myself and be right. There's nothing you could do because this splitting is absolute. It is black and white. So I really hope that this helps you understand why it was so chaotic and so impossible and how you were never getting anywhere with this. So the narcissist, instead of engaging in mutual problem solving, and what would that be? That would be, okay, I can listen to your perspective. You are a good person. You love me. You're allowed to have a complaint. You're allowed to ask me how to love you better. And, as a healthy person, I can lean into my growth, understanding your needs more and meeting your needs in a way that makes our relationship healthier and safer and more connected and more loving. That's mutual problem solving. And that is a hallmark of healthy interpersonal relationships. Whereas the narcissist, who cannot stand any discord at all, defaults to defensive maneuvers instead. So we have projection, which is you're the problem, not me. I'm not at fault, it's you. Gaslighting, that never happened, you got it wrong, you're just too sensitive, there's something wrong with you, you're relating to your relationships in the past that you always messed up. All of those things to confuse your reality and your ability to have needs and wants and values and boundaries and to speak up and to be honest about your needs, which is another part of healthy relationships. The narcissist wants to train you out of that at all costs. And there's also the big flip of the switch, which is the role reversal. It doesn't matter what I did to you and your reaction to that, which would be normal when it's awful, unloving, invalidating, unkind, or selfish. When you bring it up, now you are the villain and I am the victim. And there's also the thing where a narcissist with the gaslighting will trigger you into a rage, desperation, emotional response, where we collapse and we hand our power away because we haven't realized what's really going on here. And we're thinking we're just trying to get through to somebody to understand our perspective and validate it, which is what a normal person would do. What happens is then you get blamed for being over emotional, hysterical, full of drama, whatever it is. And that's, narcissists are incredible. It's Darvo. It's Darvo. That's what they do, right? And we know about that. So they reverse the roles and they rewrite the narrative as well, because remember, the defense of the false self is at all costs. So what happens to the narcissist brain wiring is they will literally rewrite the story in a way that suits their version and their version only. And they will adamantly defend that no matter what the facts are. And you've experienced that. Just say me in the chat if you've experienced, because you probably would have seen all of those defense mechanisms. They're the main ones, there's subcategories of them, but those are the main ones. And of course, it's terrible. So what's the end result of all of this? You cannot have an adult to adult dialogue, because the moment that you present a need, a want, a boundary, a complaint, which every adult has every right to have, and a complaint is different than a criticism. Let's just get that clear. A complaint is, I would like it if you didn't do this. A criticism is, you're a so-and-so and you're a this and you're a that and you always do this and that and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, you don't start off, good people who want healthy relationship don't start off with criticism. That would be childish, and it's going to destroy trust and connection. Why would you do that? You start off with a complaint, but the narcissist obviously takes it as emotional annihilation and all of these, soul shattering defenses come out at you. And then, of course, you're probably going to escalate into criticism, and then it's all your fault. So the narcissist does not have a priority of togetherness, solution building, conflict resolution, which is so necessary for a healthy relationship, is how, rather than fair weather when everything's just perfect on the surface, how do you deal with the challenges and the conflict, and can you resolve them healthily? Without that, you don't have a relationship. And it's Pollyanna, childish ridiculousness to think that relationships are not going to have times of stress and conflict, which is actually beautiful opportunities for growth and trust and connection when you have conscious people who are not acting narcissistically. So what's happened is you cannot have an adult to adult dialogue. You can't sort things out. And you have gone from the person I love, when you're idolized, when you're not touching the false self, you're not touching that edge, you've gone to the enemy because you did. So, you're thrown out with the bathwater, and it's horrible. And once you're in the enemy box, their psychological priority is nothing about connection. They'll put the relationship at risk over and over again, but you're trauma bonded, and that's why you're not letting go. And they're choosing their ego over you and the relationship every single time. And nothing you can do is going to change that. Nothing. And it's not personal. It's not because you're unworthy of love or validation or connection. It's because they literally do not have the resources, the desire, or the brain wiring to meet you in grey, sticky energy. They just don't. So I'll give you an example. Sarah, one of my clients, she'd been dating a guy called Daniel for 2 years, and he would tell his friends that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him, and she would post photos of their perfect relationship, and everybody thought he was the greatest guy and they were so in love. But as an example, and she told me about this one Saturday morning, she just went to him, she said, look, can we talk about some of the problems that we've been having in the relationship? And she said, his persona just changed, and he just came flying out with, so I'm not good enough for you now. Do you even care about what you do to me? Now, mind you, we'd never come forth with this. This was just in rebuttal to her wanting to connect in this way. And he was like, oh, so you just want me to be a little lapdog, do you? You just want me to be like some pussy guy that just, listens to you and goes along with what you want? And she pointed out to him that she wasn't bringing stuff up to criticize him, She just wanted to, rather than just bottle it up, she wanted to lean in and work with stuff so they could get closer and more connected and love each other more in the relationship. And his response to that is, well, nothing I ever do is good enough for you. You're always finding something wrong with me. You make me feel like a bad person. You just need to go get a better guy. So he did that stuff. Who's heard those words? Let me know in the chat. Just say, I've heard them. I've heard them. And of course, Sarah just got so triggered and she started to cry. And then Daniel said, I can't deal with your drama. You're toxic. And he left the house, he drove away. And when he returned, he put himself to sleep in the spare bedroom, leaving Sarah devastated and in shock. And she said she cried for half the night. Horrible. So what's the truth about what just went down there? What's the truth? And she came to me and she goes, well, maybe I went to him the wrong way. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is, you did not go to him the wrong way. And if you have to work out exactly the way to not have that happen, that's ridiculous. That's walking on broken glass. Nobody can exist like that. Okay. And that's not, he's got serious issues that he hasn't dealt with. So this actually wasn't about Sarah's request. It was about splitting. He had split. So when she agreed with him, she was all good. She was the most beautiful partner that he loved. But the moment she expressed a need that challenged his self-image, she triggered a narcissistic injury. And without emotional object constancy, he couldn't hold on to the love he felt for her while feeling this emotional annihilation of feeling criticized. So she became all bad. She was bad for him, a bad partner. And he discarded her emotionally to protect his ego. And I saw this play out with another client. We're going to call her Amy, whose partner had been Mr. Supportive. So she was unwell and telling everyone how caring and committed he was. But the moment she recovered enough to gently raise how unsupported she'd felt in some key moments, he snapped. And overnight, she was painted as ungrateful, selfish, and even cruel. So he abandoned the hero act that he was playing and started playing the wounded victim role and rallied others to see her as the villain. You know, she's ungrateful. Look at everything I've done for her. It's all about her ungratefulness. And that was because her truth threatened his fantasy of himself. And the shame of that was too great for him to face. So Amy, thank goodness, and also our beautiful previous lady, left and did their healing and could finally see that many of so-called good deeds were only possible as long as the shame-based wounds weren't triggered. And that's the performance of, if I do all the good deeds and I'm Mr. Nice person and da-da-da, and, you know, female narcs can do this as well. This is not gender specific. And then, you know, it's like, well, you are great. You're amazing. You're indispensable. You're wonderful. But it's performance. It's not presence. And it's designed to people please so that they're seen as perfect. And it's about covering up the fragile, egoic false self. But yet when true care, love, and responsibility are required in a way that's in gray area without being able to maintain that mirage, well, that's when it all cracks apart. And it cracks apart really badly. And I'm sure you've experienced this. And it can be really, really confusing because you're like, this person is so great. You know, there are things that you like about them. Now, mind you, this is more consistent with the covert altruistic narcissist. Like you may get the malignant narcissist where the good stuff falls off and the cruelty just becomes more and more and more and more and more and more. Okay, but with your covert, with your altruistic, it's more pretty much exactly what I'm talking about. Who can relate? Who's had both versions or knows what I'm talking about? Okay, so now how is this all possible and why is this all happening? Because to the narcissist, the outer person or other experience is not about a living, feeling being or a live situation that has its own consciousness and other people connected to it. It's an object in the movie in regard to how it's going to respond to the performance. So people and situations are used for ego protection and gratification. And this is about appeasing the false self. And what does appeasing the false self means? Means protecting it and keeping it in a container so that the shame wound of deep, dark inferiority is not actually triggered. So it's a stage prop. And it's the context of what they're living through, because a false self is not real. It's not real, and it doesn't deal with reality. It deals with fantasy. So this stage prop is not a context for genuine interpersonal relationships. So people into genuine interpersonal relationship want the growth, want the messiness, want the self-reflection, want the connection, want the intimacy, the authenticity, and the truth. A narcissist is terrified by all of those things. They don't want personal growth and they don't want mutual growth in the relationship. They want the ego protected. So hence why relationships are treated so conditionally. Okay, so that the narcissist can confirm the superiority, the false self. So you're blamed for the enemy, you're blamed for the feelings, and the narcissist's internal command becomes this. When you're the enemy and it's on a hairline trigger. And this is the internal command, and you need to understand this because this is really big and it's really devastating until you realize what's going on. So to the narcissist, you must be humiliated. You must be shut down. You must be demeaned. You must be treated with contempt. You must be gaslighted, so that you think you're the problem and you're losing your mind and you lose all sense of a relationship with yourself. Or you must be abandoned and discarded for making them feel this way. So all of this is about training you in no uncertain terms to not do it again. So who was shut down and internalized and got to that point where you've gone, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to retreat. I'm just going to bottle all this up, because if I step on that, I know what's going to happen. Or you may have been more of the evolving conscious healer type where you thought, I can break through. I can get to them. I can make a difference. I'm going to stick at this. I'm going to work at this. Or maybe you did a bit of both. The truth is, no amount of explaining, pointing out realities, clarifying simple truths are going to be heard. No leading the way by your own example is going to set an example. You're going to be met with condemnation. Your head spins. None of it makes sense to your model of the world and your emotional model of the world. Even if you've got wounds, even if you're working through stuff, nothing makes sense at that level, because you haven't come across anything like that before unless you're with a narcissistic person. So typical, it's an impenetrable force. You can't reason with it, the splitting. It's an impenetrable force. It wouldn't matter how many shapes of a pretzel you turned yourself into, there is no reasoning with it. So typical responses from a narcissist in this state include things like, so you think you're better than me. So remember, they are in contempt. Contempt of others is superiority. And they do it in everyday life, blaming everybody for anything that triggers off a shame wound. They do it when they drive on the road. They do it with you. Okay, and the inferiority is contempt for themselves. It's the ways they speak to themselves. So when they're in victim, they're coming out with all this contempt. So you think you're better than me. Nothing I ever do is good enough. What about when you did this to me? So I'm just a bad person then. So, and they do a flat out denial of the facts, coupled with an intense rescripting of the situation that firmly positions you as the one at fault and them as the victim, conveniently deleting key facts in the process. And they will stick on that narrative no matter what. There's not going to be any self-reflection and self-ownership of what actually happened, and figuring that you are a blood, flesh, soul, human being in the interaction. You're a prop, you're an object that triggered the false self, and you're treated accordingly. And all of these tactics are designed to derail you, pulling you into defending yourself. And that's exactly where you go. So what you can find when you're defending yourself, you might be trying to re-explain the facts over and over again. And they have no interest in accepting them. Or proving maybe that you, when they go into the self-deprecation, well, I'm just a bad person. I'm not cut out for relationships. I just can't do this. I don't know how to, I can't give you what you want, all that stuff. So then you might go into trying to tell them they're not bad. They do have the ability. You're reassuring them. And this also takes the focus off accountability, and it hooks you into trying to fix their feelings and raise them up rather than standing just in your truth, which is the only truth. And I remember a time when I brought up something that was hurting me to a narcissistic individual, and it was complaint stating facts that a promise had not come to fruition. It was causing intense pressure for me, and I needed support and accountability regarding how to get through this terrible mess that he'd been in charge of, and I needed empathy. And he made excuses, blaming me and other people for the non-delivery, and also completely denied the lack of communication about any of it regarding the promise. And the next words out of his mouth were, oh, so I'm just a terrible person now. You think you're better than me. Or, oh, well, that happened. We just need to move on. And completely dismissing the hurt and the repair that was necessary. And then it, when I pushed for that and stood in that, then it escalated to how I brought this all on myself anyway, and everything I'd ever wanted to achieve was just for my own selfish self-service anyway. So all of that is classic narcissistic deflection, which is designed to protect the false self from shame, no matter the cost to the relationship at all. And now I know this was never about solving the problem or creating connection and healthy conflict resolution in the relationship. It was all about preserving the illusion without any regard to putting the relationship at risk. So that was a final straw for me. I permanently ended that connection, which was not so much on the epic oversight and lack of communication as a complete lack of accountability and humanity. And such a person is never going to be safe to trust, to have access in our lives. You're always going to end up in situations like this. So how does this hook us in is a really important thing that we need to look at. To keep the mask intact, narcissists switch those roles, and it is about those roles that are a big hook. And it depends what they need in the moment. Does the false self need admiration? Does it need sympathy? Does it need control? Does it need leverage? And one moment they're the indispensable hero, look at what I'm doing and how amazing you are in my life. And then they're the victim who you've done wrong to. And both roles are designed, well, it's just how they're operating actually. It's not even designed, that's just how they operate as a false self. But what happens is it keeps the focus off their shame, and it puts it onto you to keep you engaged, hooked, and feeding the false self, because you're either admiring them or you're either arguing with them and trying to fix them to get them to not be self-deprecating. So if they're the victim, you're going to want to rescue them, you're going to fix them, you're going to prove you're loyal, you're going to try and talk them out of the way they're being, you're going to try and heal them out of their own self-deprecation. And what's happening is when you're looking at the hero, you're either in praise, and when you're looking at the victim, you're either in guilt or obligation. You might even be apologizing and taking the blame yourself. So here's another real life example. I had client who was in a relationship where her partner was either the brilliant provider or the poor wounded man who she was taking for granted and was being ungrateful about. And when she tried to express her needs, he would switch from hero to victim instantly. After everything I've done for you, how dare you complain? Or I put up with this in my previous marriage and I promised myself I would never go through this again. So the result, she was constantly pulled between rewarding his hero status or apologizing and taking responsibility when he would hit victim, because she was terrified that he would leave her, which he threatened constantly. So it's awful. Either roles, when you're pandering to them, are just awful because it's taking you out of your connection to your values, your truth, your needs, your wants, and your boundaries, and realizing that this person has zero capacity to provide them healthily. So what's the thriver shift? How do we come out of being the victim ourselves and we go from victim to thriving? Okay, so the narcissist is what they are, and I hope that today's description has really actually helped you get very clear on certain things and why you can't break through and why there's no hope to. And let's just be honest about that, because change is impossible without self-reflection, without humility, without honesty, without owning what's going on with them and wanting to actually heal it. No healing is possible. So there is no way that anybody is going to stop splitting unless they face and admit that they're doing it. Intimate impersonal relationships will never be mutually respectful and mature. You're always going to be walking on broken glass. But for us, the deeper question is, why are we in that dynamic and what do we need to heal? For me personally, my enormous inner wounds was invalidation. Not being seen, not being met, not being heard, and not being safely loved. And I'd never received consistent empathy, emotional sensibility, or accountability in order to feel truly connected, deeply in love and safe. And this included breaches of trust and deep betrayal wounds. So this had been my childhood as well. And because of this, I unconsciously outsourced my sense of worth, accepting individuals into my life who mirrored these still unhealed wounds. And I'd then twist myself in knots trying to get a person with narcissistic defenses to behave like any sane, normal, adult human would, in my mind, who would want a healthy relationship. Can you relate to this? You've been there. But the truth is, and this is quantum law, so within, so without. The composition of our inner universe is exactly what our outer universe is presenting, and the gift in that is to make the unconscious conscious and realize what we need to heal, to change frequency, to change our reality. So the truth is, until I was deeply in relationship with myself, whole, emotionally mature, and able to meet my own needs, validate and love and hold and accept and heal my own inner self and inner child, there's not the ability to intimately connect with somebody who also has wholeness and emotional unavailability. So when we look at partners in our life, whether they might have been addicts or whether they're narcissists or they're dismissive avoidance or, who are not in emotional availability with themselves, the real question is, if we come back to changing ourselves, to changing our lives and healing ourselves, yes, they are what they are, and that is that. But where were we in disconnection with the emotional availability with ourselves? And this is why I say all the time, narcissistic individuals are aids, angels in disguise posing as abusers. Because what does our soul want to do? Come home to ourselves to be able to generate and create a life that is full of Source's blessings. Because Source has these blessings for us. It's only our inner fractures that are keeping us separated from them. So they bring us the evidence that our soul is generating for our growth. They illuminate exactly where we're still carrying old wounds and we haven't yet healed or sealed them within ourselves. So let me ask you, and I'm just going to go through some of the following things that can keep us disconnected from ourselves and a healthy relationship. Fear of abandonment. Your inner child may still hold the belief, if I upset somebody, they'll leave me. So this can make you self-edit, over-explain, or try to make it okay with people who are emotionally unavailable, avoidant, or narcissistic, or punishing you when you have a need. There could have been a lack of emotional safety growing up. Maybe love was withdrawn or replaced with blame when you express feelings, and your nervous system learned that other people's moods and needs mattered more than yours. And this can attract partners who expect you to meet their narrative and emotional wounds at the expense of your own needs and wants and nervous system. Who can relate? There's a shame wound. There's something wrong with me. And a lot of people in this community, I call you star seeds, I call you black sheep, people that are interested in spirituality and conscious growth, people that feel a lot, people that are empaths. You can have the beliefs, maybe I'm too much, I'm too demanding, or I'm not enough. Can hook you into cycles of trying to prove your worth or earn love with people who never had the capacity to give it to you safely and wholesomely. We can be over-functioning to avoid conflict. If you learn to take responsibility for keeping the peace, trying to heal it, being the one that does all the work in your relationship, you'll naturally slip into explaining, caretaking, rescuing, healing somebody from their own feelings instead of standing firm for your own. Is this making sense? So, the quantum truth on all of this, until we shift these wounds, they can act as a vibrational handshake between you and narcissistic individuals who invalidate you. Their inability to hold object constancy, which means I see you as a person I love no matter the conversation we're having, rather than collapsing into all bad, you are the enemy narratives because the false self is challenged, that may be unconsciously perfectly matching the parts of you that still believe, that have beliefs that love means losing yourself to keep somebody else. Let me say that again. You may have the beliefs that love means losing yourself to keep somebody else. That can be really big. So, Thrivers, I hope that this has really helped today. Cleared up some of the mess for you as to why this has continually happened or why it continually did happen in your previous relationships. And I want you to let me know in the comments, have you seen this hero-victim dynamic in your life? And what role did you get pulled into? Were you the praiser of the hero? Were you the fixer and the rescuer of the victim? Share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Please get it out there. And I'd love you to like and subscribe to my channels on Facebook and YouTube so that you can spread this Thriver message far and wide, where we go deeper, we go quantum, we go beneath the surface to true healing and resurrection of ourselves. And if you would like to start healing deeply and quantumly from this, and go from broken and distraught and battling to healthy, whole, thriving, and attracting emotionally healthy and available relationships on all levels of your life, people who can self-reflect, take responsibility, and grow with your own journey of love and healing, then click the link to the NARP program in the description above. So, lots of love, everybody. Thank you for being here today, and please share this video. So, I love you guys, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.